I wonder what other people did. Restream versus Riverside Live. Yeah, that's just so you can stream on multiple platforms. Hmm. I'm gonna eat while we watch this. It really did. It was kind of funny. Samson wouldn't work is the problem. We'll go watch that other video because I want to prove why it's wrong. Everyone else did. I didn't. Good. Looks like a giant Myosaur. What did you say it was called? Okay. Shantangosaur. I mean, yeah. His accent really wasn't that far off for that word, though. Let's see. So, Tangosaurus, 50 feet long, 18 tons. So, yeah, I mean, you're looking at. This thing's already almost the same size as Goji Center's creature, though. Honestly, it might be taller. I don't know. Goji Center's might be the same. So, I mean, just that base is. I mean, that's a good choice for a base size. So, I mean, I don't fault him at all. Did I lose my. What? Oops. Did I shut the tab? What happened here? Is it on a different. What? No, that's me. What the hell? Oops. I think I lost YouTube doing that. Oh well. I'll just have to pull that back up. Oh, the Velociraptor thing. That was fun. Let's see. Wait, how do I. History. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, but that's at its butt. At its butt, it's almost 15. Granted, I'll give it, if that thing lifts off the ground because it's a facultative biped, which means it can be a biped if it wants. Primarily, it's a quadruped if you look at its body, though. I mean, if that thing picks its front end all the way up, I mean, you're looking at something that's standing 20, almost 25 feet tall. I didn't. Well, that's also because of how they designed them in the bark, which will be freaking awesome. Eyeball on the horn. I mean, my thing's a lot more lightweight than this. I think mine's like 9 or 10 tons most. I used hyenas and boars as my base for getting extra stamina. You don't really want to use any carnivores though. That's going to be a problem. You see, you're going to run into a couple problems just there alone because you've got two animals that bite differently. Unlike a Triceratops, where a Triceratops' bite is actually almost identical to a T Rex's bite. The bite of a hadrosaur, I mean, they're duckbills. That's the thing. That's like you're trying to do this. It's not the same thing. So you're mixing two different bite styles. It's the same problem that Hank ran into. Hank had a problem of Hank is using two different bite styles. Granted, he also was using a bite force that was completely out of his own league. But you're going to run into an issue, another thing with the eyes, because you have to completely rework the head if you're going to use Tyrannosaurus eyes. Because if you take T Rex eyes and you put them on the head in the same way that you would put a herbivore's eyes are normally here. You put T Rex's eyes here, his eyes are completely fucked because he's a binocular vision. The way their eyes work is it was overlapping so that he could actually see really well, but he didn't see as wide as other dinosaurs. So I mean, there's really no studies on their sense of smell though. So I'm not sure why he's using sense of smell as one of the choices. But I mean, the other issue you're running into is you're saying it's now an omnivore, but you're taking a pure carnivore and a pure well, maybe they weren't pure, but they could have also been facultatives. But you're taking a mostly pure carnivore and mostly pure herbivore and mixing them. That's like taking somebody who, I don't know, say you have a friend who's a vegan and you just randomly feed them meat after 20 years of eating just plants. Their body will reject it. I don't know how well this animal's digestive system would work because you're not going to work those two together. So, I mean, I'm curious to see where it goes with this. No, that would go to crocodiles. They are technically still land animals. but you also need to have space for that brain to fit in the skull. That herbivore body that you're starting as a base does not have a cavity in the back of the head properly sized. Indomus's base, that was based on a T Rex, which meant they started with the proper cranial space. But you're slowing it down a bunch. Part of the problem with making your creature so big, this is what I ran into trying to create mine. Once you get over a certain size limit, your creature is going to be so big, it is physically impossible for it to move quickly. I mean, yes, you have like elephants can have a burst of speed, but they don't hold that. They also have things like softening pads under their feet. Now, granted, T Rex has those, but you didn't point out that you're going to use that for that. Heavy armor would work, but the problem is, are you including the neck? You got to realize this is one of the things people don't think about. I mean, T Rex's head was insanely heavy, but it's because of all the neck musculature that it had. I mean, for you to have a T Rex head on the end of a long necked dinosaur and for it to work properly, I mean, that thing's neck is gonna be. I don't even know. That thing's neck is gonna be the size of a semi truck. Except part of the problem is your thing's not fast enough to use that effectively. They are cute. Why does it kind of look like an armadillo? So your base creature weighed like 18 tons. If you're putting that much armor on something that big, you're also increasing its overall size. Sorry, I'm talking with food in my mouth. You're increasing its overall size using frickin' uh, long neck dinosaur. I mean, I'm just BS guessing right now, but if your thing's over I don't know, 70 feet long. You're looking at something that's 30 tons. How much? What was it? Campylosaurus or something? Not Ankylosaurus. What did he call it? Head skull. We'll skip back to the Venom thing in just a second. Kamara. Kama. Camosaurus, essentially. Why are you people... The problem with this is when you try to do dinosaurs, you have to remember that you have to keep it in the bounds of reality. If you put too much armor on something, it wouldn't move. I mean, that's why if you look at it like whales don't actually have armor. They have blubber. And that's because if they had armor, they'd be so heavy they'd just sink. And that's something in water where gravity doesn't affect you the same. You can grow absurdly big. Yeah, we'll stop right there. So, Camarasaurus. Camarasaurus only weighed 20 tons. You're making something that physically can't exist. I mean, this is the issue. You can't go over the weight of your biggest creature. So I had to balance. My biggest thing was the Dinosuchus. So I went between the weights of the Fallow and the Dinah, which put me at about 9 tons. You go between your first one, which was at an admittedly 16 tons already, and now you're looking at something that's 20 tons. You can't go over 18 or 19 tons. I guess you could push 20, but you've got to include all the muscular structure. I mean, the bones, the way the air sacs are in the body to properly help blood move, blood flow. I You create something bigger than Camosaurus and it won't live. It can't. I use the same thing. I use Komodo Dragon. Yep. You remember the synchronization thing I was talking about? That's one of the issues that a lot of people I think who went in the Hall of Shame, which is this group they're going to be releasing soon. They haven't released it yet. But when they release the Hall of Shame, I'll bet you the issue you're going to run into is most of the people who had issues like this, they put pure carnivores and pure herbivores, and that just, it can't mesh. So, like, my thing was I went for all omnivore or carnivore. I did not use herbivores. I don't think I did. No, I don't think I use any herbivores. Because, I mean, like, I used, like, vampire bats. That was one of the things I used. And that's not really the same, but it was, yes, though it was different, I used very little of what it had. So, like, I think people who did the same thing as Hardy here, they're just going to run into the issue of it's not going to properly It's not going to connect right. Um, I am going to put the link for this video to Hardy and see. I'd love to hear your response on this. I'd like to talk with you and just like hear what you think. I really like talking to people and just seeing what you think. So, I mean, please, by all means, reach out to me. I'd love to talk about this and see what you think. Not a single bite. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it actually had two different types of venom, which is one of my favorite things that I studied. So its saliva isn't actually venomous, but it does have an anticoagulation agent in it. And that just makes it so that the creature kept bleeding. The venom that it has is actually neurotoxic, which won't really work on Indom, but I mean, the overall, it's a great thing that you have this just like concoction of venoms. The other fun thing is, I mean, you have an accelerated growth rate. Most reptiles do. So it's a good choice. It helps you to speed up how quickly it grows up. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons they don't recommend you ever hold a bat. I do it all the time, though. um, that kind of works against you too, though. So, heat pits don't work like your eyes. That's a misconception. I studied snakes a lot, so I really like them. The heat pits work as a oh, I mean yes, technically a second set of eyes almost, but it gives them generic area of it's here. It's why if you ever keep a pet viper, which I have a friend who does, you can't have the heat lamp very close to the cage because when you try to feed them, they'll go after the heat lamp, which is one of the issues, which is why you have to have multiple backup systems. Which I mean kind of works with the T Rex eyes, so good on you that you have that as a dual system. I'm pausing again, but I would actually recommend if you ever rework this thing, keep the fruit bat, but try to get rid of the carnivores because there are herbivores that have most of these traits that you're giving them. I'd replace I'd replace Boreala pelta and your little I keep your little crocodile thing. Definitely keep that. I don't think you need the excess armor. It's gonna be too heavy. I would strip the Boreala pelta. I'd also strip the T Rex and replace it with Triceratops. Triceratops had a extremely strong jaw, one of the strongest for an herbivore, and that actually would work better for synchronicity, especially if you're planning on having a creature that stays on all fours. Keep the fruit bat because that's also herbivore. But rather than doing the heat pits, I would switch out the heat pits for the fruit bat having echolocation because then you can see in the dark better because it's going to be a noise, especially with you giving it a better sense of hearing. Yeah. Sorry. Uh, that's not entirely true. Gorilla is a good choice because it is a herbivore. However, rather than gorilla, I would recommend bonobo because if you're trying to increase brain capacity, but you're going to run into the same thing that I was talking about earlier of you don't have anywhere to store that brain. With increased brain capacity, you need more synapses to be able to fire off. And if you don't have enough neurological connections up there, you can't make your creature physically smarter. Um, I would definitely recommend looking into that, and I would say rework this because I mean it'd be really cool to see you re-release a new one. Um, I'd love to see you try to rewrite this. I mean, I'd love to try to help out if you are willing to accept help, but it's entirely up to you. I just love to see another iteration of this. I like that. Dying back to the world's oldest epic. So there's a few issues I can already see here. One is the mouth because the mouth design you're trying to pull a design of a T-Rex and I'm trying to look over here. The problem is you kept the herbivore beak which would work with like how Ultimasaurus was done by Goji. I mean, they combined those two and they did it pretty well. But it's a shearing beak. Your beak is a little bit wider, and if you look at the head, you've got a big flat surface, and your eyes are too low to properly cross. You're gonna have a giant blind spot right here. Yeah, I mean that's not too bad if you're close. But the other thing is, where are your heat pits? If your heat pits are running along your lip, you've only got heat pits here. You've still got a blind spot right down the middle because you got that big old freaking beak. Yep. I never watched it. I didn't want to. How much downsizing did you do? 16 meters. 6, 12, 18. Your thing's 20 feet tall. 16, 30. 6, 12, 18. 48 feet long. Thing's 50 feet long. 20 feet tall. And only weighs 20 tons. That's not scientifically possible, I don't think. No, it won't. Gorillas are deceivingly light. I mean, I say that. That's not necessarily true. For their size, they tend to be pretty light. Um, yes, these animals can move fast, but I mean, you're looking at something that's got fur. It doesn't have heavy plating armor. You've got, I mean, just here alone, this armor along the back, that's gonna be a couple tons on its own. I mean, you gotta, if you're assuming you've got a T Rex head here, if this is supposed to be the same size as a T Rex's head, I mean, that thing's gonna be probably 800 pounds alone with no muscle or anything attached to it. So you're looking at a 1 ton head, at least, if not more. I mean, the bones on this thing are gonna weigh fucking something insane. No, it won't. You have a massive blind spot right here. Did you really only release this 3 weeks ago? Hmm. I'm terrible at spelling. The head doesn't have the right size to be able to hold the brain processing. Like, you don't have. Look at a silverback. So the brain fits in right here. The brain of a T Rex fits back there somewhere. It looks like I'm saying his brain's in his mouth. But for you to have a brain big enough for it to do what you think, I mean, you're looking at. Well, that head's probably the size of my desk. So, I mean, you're looking at a brain that needs to at least this much room. Like the size of me. You don't really have that much empty space in the head if you're using a T-Rex's skull as the base for the skull. Or even better, if you're using a hadrosaur skull base, you're just not going to have the space you need. So, I just need to put this video up on for him. But he's got so much armor right here. The problem is you've also got that beak. That beak is going to block off the heat pits because you're going to have heat pits. And assuming you have heat pits, the way they're going to work is they're going to go wherever they are. So they'll go about here. Because that beak is just straight cartilage, you can't have anything going through that. You'd have to remove the beak. I mean, but you pull the beak, you've now got area for the heat pits to go. So, I mean, there's a couple different ways to rework this. I'd love to talk to you about that too. Just like, what other things were you doing behind the scenes that I didn't see? Because the problem is that the biggest problem I see that you're going to run into is just not being able to meld the two different groups together. Because I mean, there's just too many conflicting things that these animals and dinosaurs have. So, but yeah, definitely, I'll drop this video and I want to see. I'd love to talk with you if you see this.